The autumn wind swept across the Montana plains, carrying with it the scent of dried grass and the promise of winter. Samuel Henderson had been working his ranch for 43 years, and in all that time, he had learned to read the signs that nature offered. The way the cattle gathered near the barn meant snow was coming, the restless stamping of his old mare. Rosie told him something was amiss in the world beyond his fence line. This particular October morning felt different, though Samuel couldn't quite put his finger on why. As he made his way toward the eastern pasture to check on a section of fence that had been giving him trouble, the feeling grew stronger. Something was calling to him across the wide expanse of his land. The fence line ran along a creek bed that had mostly dried up over the summer, leaving behind smooth stones and patches of muddy earth dotted with fallen leaves. Samuel had walked this same path thousands of times over the decades. He knew every boulder, every twisted cottonwood tree, every bend in the old creek. But today, as he approached the spot where the fence posts leaned at odd angles, he heard something that made him stop in his tracks. It was faint at first, barely audible over the whisper of wind. Through the grass, a voice, human and desperate. Please, Samuel heard the word carried on the breeze. Help me. He quickened his pace, following the sound toward a cluster of young willows that grew near what remained of the creek. The voice came again, weaker this time, and Samuel realized it was coming from beneath a large pile of fallen leaves that had gathered against the base of an old oak tree. Samuel approached carefully. His 67-year-old knees protested as he knelt down beside the leaf pile. With weathered hands that had spent a lifetime working the land, he began to brush away the golden-brown covering. What he found underneath made him freeze. A young woman lay curled beneath the leaves. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her long hair was tangled with twigs and debris. But it was her eyes that stopped Samuel's heart. They were the eyes of someone who had given up hope, yet still somehow found the strength to call out for help. The woman couldn't have been more than 25. Years old, Samuel guessed she was shivering despite the mild autumn temperature, and when she tried to speak again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry," she managed to say. "I didn't know where else to go." Samuel's first instinct was to ask questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? How long had she been lying here under the leaves? But something in her expression told him that questions could wait. This young woman needed help first, and explanations could come later. "It's all right," Samuel said, in the gentle tone he had once used with his own children when they were small. "You're safe now, I'm going to help you." He could see that she was hurt. One of her ankles was swollen, and there were scratches on her arms and face Samuel had dealt with injured animals many times over the years, and he recognized the signs of exhaustion and exposure. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked as he began to assess her condition. "Emma," she whispered. "Emma Claire. That's a pretty name." Samuel replied, "My name is Samuel Henderson, and this is my land. You're welcome here." "Emma Claire, for as long as you need to stay." Samuel helped Emma to her feet, supporting most of her weight as she struggled to stand. He could feel how thin she had become and wondered when she had last eaten a proper meal. Together they made their slow way back toward the ranch house, Samuel's old border collie Rex appearing from nowhere to walk alongside them as if he understood that this was someone who needed their protection. The ranch house had been in Samuel's family for 3 generations. It was a sturdy building with wide porches and rooms that still echoed with the laughter of children who had long since grown up and moved away. Samuel's wife, Margaret, had passed on 5 years earlier, and since then the house had felt too quiet, too empty. As Samuel helped Emma up the front porch steps, he realized that he hadn't brought another person into his home in longer than he could remember. The neighbors were good people, but everyone kept to themselves for the most part. The nearest town was 20 miles away, and Samuel made the trip only when necessary for supplies. Inside the house, Samuel settled Emma into Margaret's favorite chair by the fireplace. The chair was covered with a quilt that his wife had made from scraps of fabric saved over the years. Each square told a story of a dress worn to church, or a shirt that had seen too many days in the field. Emma sank into the chair, and for the first time Samuel could see her clearly in the lamplight. She had been beautiful once he could tell, but hardship had carved lines around her eyes that seemed too deep for someone so young. Her hands were rough and calloused like those of someone who had known hard work. "I'll make you something to eat," Samuel said, moving toward the kitchen. "I have soup that's been simmering most of the day." While the soup heated, Samuel found himself moving with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He gathered clean towels and his wife's old robe. He filled a basin with warm water and found the first aid supplies that he kept for treating injured livestock. Everything felt important suddenly, as if he were being called to use skills he hadn't known he possessed. When he returned to the living room with a tray of food, Emma was staring into the empty fireplace. Her eyes had that faraway look that Samuel recognized from his own difficult times, the look of someone remembering things they would rather forget. Emma ate slowly, as if she weren't quite sure the food was real. Samuel busied himself building a fire in the fireplace. The October evenings could get chilly, and he wanted Emma to be warm. The flames caught quickly, casting dancing shadows on the walls and filling the room with the comforting scent of burning ochres. Emma finished eating. She began to relax enough to tell her story. She had been traveling north from Texas. She explained, looking for work and a place to start over. Her husband had died in an accident at the oil fields, leaving her with nothing but debts. She had sold everything she owned to pay what she could, and then set out on foot, hoping to find family in Montana. The family had turned out to be a cruel disappointment. Relatives who had promised help in letters proved to have problems of their own, and no room for a grieving widow. Emma had been living rough for weeks, sleeping in barns when she could find them, and under bridges when she couldn't. She had been walking along the creek bed. When exhaustion finally overcame her, "I covered myself with leaves to stay warm," Emma said, looking down at her hands. "I thought maybe if I could just rest for a little while I would find the strength to keep going. But when I woke up, I couldn't seem to move anymore. That's when I heard your footsteps." Samuel listened without judgment. He had seen enough of life to know that circumstances could change quickly for anyone. A person could be comfortable and secure one day and desperate the next. The difference between those who survived and those who didn't often came down to whether someone was willing to extend a helping hand. "You can stay here as long as you need," Samuel said simply. "This house has plenty of room, and I could use the company." Emma looked up at him with surprise, as if she hadn't expected such kindness from a stranger. "I don't have any money," she said. "I can't pay you for room and board." Samuel waved away her concerns. "I'm not looking for money," he said. "I'm looking for someone to help make this place feel like a home again." Or the following days, Emma's strength returned. Samuel made sure she ate regular meals and got plenty of rest. He showed her around the ranch and introduced her to the animals. Emma had grown up on a small farm in East Texas, and she knew her way around horses and cattle. As Emma grew stronger, she began to help with the daily chores. She had a gentle way with the animals and seemed to understand instinctively what needed to be done. Samuel found himself looking forward to their conversations over breakfast and the comfortable silence they shared while working together. Emma proved to be an excellent cook. Her cornbread was better than Margaret's had been, though Samuel would never have said such a thing out loud. She also had a gift for making the house feel alive again. She opened curtains that had been closed for years and brought in wild flowers from the meadow to place in Margaret's old vases. One evening, as they sat on the front porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and red, Emma finally asked the question that Samuel had been expecting. "Why did you help me?" she said. "Why didn't you just call the sheriff or tell me to move along?" Samuel considered the question. For a long moment, he thought about his own life and the times when he had needed help. The neighbor who had lent him money when the crops failed one year. The doctor who had sat up all night with Margaret when she was sick. The countless small kindnesses that had sustained him through difficult times. "I suppose," Samuel said slowly, "that we're all just passing through this world for a little while, and we might as well try to make it easier for each other along the way." Emma nodded as if she understood. "I used to think that people were basically selfish," she said. "But then you came along and proved me wrong." Samuel chuckled softly. "I'm not any different from most folks," he said. "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." As autumn turned to winter, Emma became an essential part of life on the ranch. She helped Samuel repair equipment and tend to the animals. She kept the books and managed the household accounts with a skill that impressed the old rancher. When the first snow fell, she was ready with warm clothes that she had mended and thick stews that filled the house with wonderful aromas. Samuel found himself sleeping better at night, knowing that he wasn't alone.